Welcome to the Corporate Learning Network videocast. I'm Jeff Cattell. Today I have with me Rich Hazeltine, Leadership Development Program Manager at Zappos IP. Rich will be speaking at this year's Corporate Learning Week, November 12th through the 15th at Disney's Yacht Club Resort in Orlando, Florida. Rich, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I know you're going to be speaking about culture and specifically the technology barriers that could be inhibiting in a workplace today. So that's what you're speaking about at Corporate Learning Week. Can you expand upon that and give people maybe a little teaser of what they'll be expecting from your workshop?
Well, our company we're pretty famous for having a very deeply ingrained culture, and even straight from the interview process, even if you want to come work in our customer service area to answer telephones and deal with customers, everybody that comes on here, from entry-level hourly employee all the way up to executive, has to go through a culture interview as well. So even someone that, in our environment, you could be the most technically skilled person in your job, the best one out there on the market, but if you don't fit as far as a cultural standpoint goes, then HR has the right to basically veto any candidate at that point. So culture is very near and dear to us. And it's important as we grow and continue to be a big company and getting bigger. And with that said, as far as that relates to technology, we're also consider ourselves pretty technologically savvy. We build a lot of our own tools on our website that we maintain ourselves. So it's a real challenge for us and one that I enjoy. But as far as to keep this company culture in the midst of technology, we want to be able to leverage as much technology as we can. But I often find ourselves slowing down and saying, this is a great shiny tool and it's great, but what are you really solving for here? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Do we have to build this, develop this, offshore this, or whatever it might be? So what I'll intend to speak about is how to maintain or build up a culture within the company while using the technology that you can, but also knowing when to say when you know what, we've had enough of this technology. And oftentimes, I think when we're talking about culture and learning and performance management in any spot, that it comes down to communication. And technology helps us with communication in a lot of ways, but in some ways it gets in the way. And sometimes we just need to get a face-to-face interaction. So it's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but there you go.
No, that's great. That's really explanatory, and I think gives people an idea. I know everyone sort of seems to already know that Zappos has this great company culture, whether they've had interactions with the company or not. I know that it's just very well known, so that makes a lot of sense to sort of approach things from that angle. Now, speaking of technology, I'm wondering if you can sort of explain to us what is in place at Zappos right now, and maybe in terms of learning and development, or specifically with your work in leadership development, to really help people from a technological standpoint. And then obviously the flip side of that question, which you're sort of going to be addressing in your talk anyways, is where do you draw the line? How do you see if things are maybe not necessary or just using technology for technology's sake and don't really have an end means that is productive for your organization and for your people?
Sure. Well, for us, we're really concentrating more, and I work with a bunch of technology people, software engineers and developers and managers thereof, in addition to other groups. But a lot of what we're concentrating on is face-to-face interactions. We're going through some big changes within our company now as we get ready for our next step. We're moving our office of 1,400 people in 2 weeks across town into downtown Las Vegas, which is exciting. But we're going through quite a bit of changes at this point. And to be honest, that's probably one of the smaller changes that we have going on organizationally. So right now it's critical that our managers are keeping their fingers on the pulse of the company and of their people. So we're really concentrating on making sure that our people have good communication skill, and a lot of that includes face-to-face and trying to understand some motivations of their people and not just asking questions because they're on a list to ask questions. And that could be a challenge when I'm dealing with some of my beloved nerds with a Z, as we call them. But it's tough to get out of the email realm and get folks to actually interact face to face. And that's we've got some really smart, talented people here, and by rounding out some of those edges and making sure that they can have interactions in addition to getting the technical work done is one of our big roadmap items, I should say.
Very cool. Very cool. So it sounds like you're in this. It sounds like there's, as you're mentioning, a lot of changes happening at Zappos, and I know that with any company that is structured, intrinsically on technology, like you guys are, being an e-tailer of sorts, that there is this maturation process that you go through, and it could be a much faster, maybe, maturation process than you see in other, maybe, traditional business settings. So, from your perspective, leadership development, where are you guys at in that process? It sounds like you're 1,400 employees. That's a lot of people to be overseeing. So, what kind of leadership development things have you put into place recently to sort of deal with this enormous workforce that you have, and that these big changes that you have that are going to be put in place soon?
Sure. A lot of that has been driven by, we've been really fortunate to have 2 or 3 years successively of really strong growth, 2 or 3 years of, in a row. And while that's really good from a revenue and shareholder standpoint, growing very quickly, and because of our interview process that includes quite a bit of culture and everything, we've promoted a lot of people from within into management roles. And some of these folks never really saw themselves in that role. We're not looking for that type of role. So we found ourselves having to go back and make sure that we're making the courses available in basic management 101 stuff, communication, performance management, coaching your people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially with the promotion within model. That seems to be a point of pride at a place like Zappos as well. So one thing I wanted to ask about, and I know it might be very different the way this is approached at Zappos versus other businesses. One thing that we keep coming across in terms of our readers, in terms of people we're talking to in the industry, is being able to show return on investment and the worth of your particular program, whether it be leadership development, learning and development, sort of a very specific training program, those kind of things. So are there specific metrics you look at from your perspective, and how do you have those conversations with the executives?
Yeah, there are, and I don't think I'm alone where we can find it. When we're talking about behavioral change, and that's a lot of what I deal with, is the as far as what makes a good leader, it's kind of hard to do a checklist and really draw the line between a good leader and a leader that's not so good. So what I found has worked for us is doing really strong needs analysis and gap analysis to, what's the current state of our company of this particular behavior that we're trying to change, where do we want to be, and then what are we going to have to do to get there. So by mapping that out carefully and getting a lot of buy-in at that point, before we design or deliver any kind of curriculum whatsoever, to make sure that what we perceive as a problem is really understood by leaders as, yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Just sort of wrapping up here, I know that we've talked about a lot of different things, touched on a lot of different topics today. So one thing I wanted to ask you about is sort of what's on the horizon for you guys specifically at Zappos in terms of leadership development, and then maybe in the leadership development space in general. Like, I know you mentioned that kind of going back to basics, these one-on-one, these, interpersonal interactions and focusing on those. Are there other things that you're really focusing on implementing, and that the community of leadership leaders in general are focusing on implementing?
It's funny what I see coming from not just internally, but also outside, even outside of the technology industry, that I see more and more interest on emotional intelligence. So it's kind of double clicking on these personal interactions. That's important, but doing it with a purpose and understanding really the motivations of your people and helping them to find their own motivation. Especially in the tech industry, we're inundated with change, all the time. If you're going to grow, you have to be open to that. You've got to be ready to drop things and move on and change whatever it is you're doing. So it's really important for us to be able to help people find their own motivation, because a manager won't be able to, you can't use the same recipe for everybody on your team, not very often. So by learning a little bit more about emotional intelligence, which starts with a manager having to examine themselves first before they can really think about how their people are behaving. By doing that, and so that's one of my big goals here at our company this coming year, and forever after that. And I've seen that come in on a lot of other businesses and folks that I've talked to, that is really coming to the forefront. And EI, emotional intelligence, is a little more formal than EQ, but those two terms, I think we're going to see a lot more in the near future. And technology is important, but technology is run by the humans, and we need to make sure we're connecting with the human part.
Yeah, all right. Well, thanks, Rich. That was Rich Hazeltine, Leadership Development Program Manager at Zappos IP. For more information on Rich or any of the other speakers at this year's Corporate Learning Week, you can view an agenda by clicking the Download Now button below. Thanks for watching.